Hey,
Hey, Outliers. How you doing? Niiamah Ashong here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey here today. We are on an Outliers Edge conversation, and we have an incredible guest with us. It's Sarah Seweryniak. Sarah, did I get your last name properly? Let me make
you
sure I capture that.
did.
All right.
Nice
Nice
job.
enough. Um, Sarah, Sarah's an awesome outlier, and we're getting a chance to get to know each other. And as we're getting a chance to know each other, we hit record so that you all get a chance to get to know Sarah as well. Um, Sarah, can I thank you very much for making time for this, firstly.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Yeah, well, it feels good here. Like I feel honored by your presence. And when I have a one-on-one conversation, I like to start off by just reminding myself about like who am I actually talking to? Because I can get into the structure more than like meeting the person here. You down for that if I share a bit about like who you've been to me so far?
For sure. Yeah, love
Cool.
it.
So, Sarah, like we're just getting to know each other, but there's a couple things that strike out for me about you. One of the things that strikes out for me is that like you're able to meet people with like what with like where they are, and like create the space for that person to be seen, held, and like do what they need for themselves. In particular, we came on here, and I'm like, I feel like I have a need for some food. You're like, lots of space was immediately there, and there was something in that exchange where I got that like, okay, this is not just like you have room for people, and that people have room to explore and to just be with you in those spaces, and that continued on as we've been getting to know each other here. I'm excited for Outliers to get to know like the kind of space you create, the kind of the way that you look at things. We're constantly saying, how do we continue to up level where we are rather than just move forward? And so I'll be curious in this conversation how you're doing that for yourself, and how you just continue to keep striving forward. You down for that?
I'm down for that. I really appreciate those words. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, my general thing is that like I'm a reflection of what you actually already brought in. All right. So just thanks for being you. Sarah, let's get started here with a sense of just helping outliers get a chance to see you. So let's first start off here. Yeah, I think this is where we're gonna go. Let's first start off with you sharing a bit about you and the game that you're currently playing.
Sure. About me, I am a marketing professional in Buffalo, New York. I have a typical 9 to 5 job, like many people in the world, and then also on the side, I do speaking. I speak on marketing. I speak on life motivation. I also mentor a lot of career professionals. Those can range anywhere from, young college graduates trying to make their mark and get their foot in the door in the field of marketing. Could be somebody that's kind of mid-career level hitting a slump, and even those that are kind of getting ready to move on and retire and but still want to stay significant in the marketing field here locally where I live. So I really specialize in helping individuals thrive, whether that's their own personal brand, their business. So having the opportunity to speak on stages and share those innovative marketing strategies, utilizing your story to kind of set you apart from everybody else is something that's been really fulfilling to me. Especially the mentorship that I've been able to do over the last few years with guiding people to really stand out in a crowd. Because confidence is really important, and a lot of people, even if you've got amazing credentials, a lot of people I have found really lack that sense of confidence to advance their careers and just to kind of give them that sense of purpose and everything. So I have hosted my own podcast, Best Foot Forward, as well, giving anybody advice from career, especially in the marketing space.
I appreciate you. There's a couple different things that are running through my mind, but the first thing that came in for me is like, what does confidence mean to you? Like when you think about someone who has it and who doesn't, like what's there and what's not.
So confidence to me is being able to feel comfortable in space, comfortable in a room, and not only for yourself, but as you're leading into the conversation, allowing others to feel safe in your space too. I think when you think about going to give a public speech, I think the best advice I had ever gotten, because I I'm an introvert, and for me, I'd rather kind of just be on the outskirts and kind of just hang low and retreat a little bit. So I was always nervous public speaking. And the best piece of advice I had gotten was, nobody really you're so worried about people judging you. You're up on a stage and everyone's looking at you, and then you're just worried about what is everybody thinking. But the fact is, everyone's only really thinking about themselves, and you just go up there and you do you. And for me, that was almost like a huge, I don't know why I never thought of that perspective. So for me, confidence is just moving with ease and comfort. And even if you are uncomfortable, just, I hate to say tough it out in a sense, but to allow yourself to almost be in that discomfort so that you can have the experience under your belt, so that in the next time something rolls around, you can handle it.
I think that part about like having the experience under your belt is something that like I think oftentimes gets missed in these games here, where it's like having to have done it before or have someone else show it and feeling like the confidence comes from there. But what like you brought in some point of like, hey, if you actually go do it, you'll have the experience one way or the other, and that continues to compound. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you just have to take the first step. I think so many people are afraid of the unknown, of what if this happens, or what if, this goes wrong, or I trip and I fall, or I fail. When failure is honestly the best thing that's ever going to happen to you.
In which way, Sarah?
In any way, whether you stumble on your words if you're giving a talk, whether you lose your job, everything happens for a reason, in my opinion. And, from bad always will come good. So I think when you have those experiences, and you realize that really nothing at the end of the day can shake you, um, the worst things, like, I mean, I've like a year, it was about 2 summers ago, I was let go, mass layoff. And I think so many people get worried when they're losing jobs. This is why this is bringing this up in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, you, I think everybody at some point will unfortunately, get laid off or have something happen with their job and their position. But the thing is like the clock's always going to be ticking. It's always going to keep continuing. And sometimes, with bad things that, you can view that as a bad thing. I actually hated my job at the time. So I was oddly thrilled, even though my husband and I have 2 young kids. We obviously have a roof over our head. There's plenty of responsibilities to be concerned with. But for me, it led me to, a new opportunity that I was really passionate about. It led me to amazing new people in my life who I can't imagine ever not having in my life. So generally, when it comes to building your confidence, it can really shake your confidence if you lose a job, just as using that as an example. Was I not good enough? What was, I can't believe I failed. You didn't fail. There's always circumstances that lead to that. And maybe that wasn't the role for you, or maybe like in my situation, it was a financial situation for the company. But generally you're going to, lick your wounds for whatever time, for a little bit of time that you need to do that. And then, carry on. And, usually from bad will come good. And sometimes I think we're not patient enough to let that lesson play out always. So when life hits you real hard, your confidence can go either way. You can either let it destroy your confidence, or you can utilize that to really use it almost like you're weightlifting, or you're building a house. Let it build you up, build your character.
So I find myself right now really curious, Sarah, around two things. I think I'm bringing the first thing that I've been curious about for a while, which is like I know you help other people with their stories and bringing that out in the world. I'm curious a bit here. Do you mind sharing your story? Tell us about your story right now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot there. I will say, like, for the last 2 years, I'll share that portion just to show you like how your life can have funny twists and turns to it.
Yeah.
2 years ago, well, I should say 3 years ago, I gave birth to my husband and I, our second daughter, our youngest, and 8 months of like mystery illness. Doctors didn't know what to do with me. Treat you for this or that. And then after 8 months, I finally got a diagnosis of celiac disease. And for those that might not know what celiac is, it's basically your body has an autoimmune response against gluten. So if you eat something with gluten, bread, wheats and everything, you'll get really sick. And you can actually, if you don't adhere to a gluten-free diet, you can basically get small bowel cancer. So gluten-free is the cure-all for that. But um, it was 8 months of suffering, not really, having medical professionals not know what to make of you or what have you. And so for me, I mean, it was suffering as far as like being curled up on the floor in agony, throwing up, all these things when I should have really been just enjoying my newborn and my and our growing family instead of worrying about my health and what's happening to me. So from that, having that diagnosis, I really started my own health journey as part of my story, and I went bigger than gluten free. I went, what are the ingredients in our foods? What are the ingredients in the products that we use for everyday stuff, from laundry detergent to soaps and all those things? And really started living in a holistic manner, really looking at health in a holistic, functional way. And from there, ended up, as I mentioned, losing a job. Like probably this is the summer of 23. So I was diagnosed April 22 with celiac. So summer of 2023, let go. Got a job very quickly. Bounced off. Yeah, I was only laid off for about 2 months. Bounced really, really quick, but was in a job that I could not stand. It was corporate, great people, but I think that situation that I went through ignited a purpose. And I really felt like I can't just go to an office, sit in a cubicle, and just do technical marketing work. I need to do something that I'm passionate about. And for me, it was holistic functional health. And this summer, I ended up taking a position with a integrative medical practice called OWM Integrative Wellness, and as their marketing director. And so when you talk about pain leading to purpose, it doesn't get much sweeter than that. Had I not gone through what I went through, I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have today about health, which we just recently had our own health journey with our oldest daughter, which if I hadn't gone through what I went through, wouldn't know how to advocate in the healthcare space, wouldn't know how to help my daughter get to the root cause of what's going on with her, whereas you don't always get that opportunity in conventional medicine. And then, also the people that have come into my life from that position who have just been impactful for me from a huge life perspective. So pain to purpose. So that's a bit of my story for I could keep going on. Like I think all of us have connections through various stories in our life, but for me, I think one thing that I often preach to people or try to impart on them is that you could go through complete hell. I mean, complete suffering hell. We all have a story of some capacity, and some of us have multiple chapters of those stories in our book. But sometimes you got to zoom out, and it might take time to see the connections of, if that didn't happen, then this good would not have happened, or this purpose would not have come your way. And that's pretty powerful, I think so.
It's really powerful because I feel like it's something that you stand for, Sarah. Like,
Yeah.
I don't hear this, like, this doesn't feel like a bumper sticker kind of thing from you, you know? Um, I feel like you're really good at finding examples of this, you know? Let me know. I'm still getting to know you, but if there was, I feel that component of there is no good or bad. or maybe there is no bad, there's only just like the precursor before the good and what you do with it. Like there's something there. What am I seeing?
I think you're seeing like, I mean, there's nothing happens by accident. You know what I mean? Nothing happens by accident. We all have a story, whatever you believe in, in the world or in the universe. I think that everything happens for a reason, as corny as that sounds. And as much as that line is always thrown around, we all have, again, that story in our life and that story to tell. And the unfortunate fact of life is that none of us are going to walk through this unscathed. We're all going to experience some pretty massive scars. And you can easily say too that there's people out there that, well, that person, they have it so easy. Everything happens for them, and they never have anything bad happen to them. They have like the best luck ever. I've never seen anything bad happen to that person. At some point, it's it's going to hit all of us. And the fact is too, it's the fact that you don't know everyone's story. Like, we're just meeting now, and I would love to hear your story of life too. But you can never just assume either, that people have had either an easy go of it at all, because we all have a life experience and a story behind our eyes.
Yeah, there's something in there when you talk about like story. That the thing that was interesting to me was like I knew you did stories, so I asked you like what's your story, and you're like, and you took some time to figure out like what's a story that I want to tell. I feel like that's something that like feels important there, where it's like you talk about multiple chapters. I think about it's like multiple books and multiple sagas around different things here. I often say every story starts in the middle. So people are like, well, I don't know where you want me to start. I'm like, even if you tried, you would still start in the middle. Like, unless and so I think that there's a component here that comes out where my language was not precise enough. I said, what's your story? But I think there's something more about like, tell me a story about yourself or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something there in a sense of like there's just way more than one. Um,
True.
and so like the framing of the question, I think I led us on a path. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it can go either way. I mean, you think of, when I think of working with individuals, whether it's their personal brand or even their business brand, and you think, well, what's your story? Why did you start this? Or we all have an origin story. If you want to put it in the superhero sense, there's a
Okay.
reason, you know what I mean? There's also a
Yeah.
reason why maybe somebody starts a business. Um, some sort of call to action or passion that they have, that they really, saw a need in a market for something specific. I don't know, maybe one day I might start a gluten-free restaurant. Who knows? And what's my story? You just heard my story of my celiac diagnosis. That's my why. There's not, where I live in the East Coast, in the Western New York, Buffalo area, there's not a ton of specific gluten-free restaurants. So that would be my calling to, I want to do this to help a certain population. So I think there's a lot of different elements with where you can go with story, um, whether that's incredibly deep and personal, with getting to know somebody one on one, like we are, or trying to figure out someone's why. What gets you up in the morning.
Yeah, that's interesting. So now as we're talking, it's like, so what's your origin story? That actually, I get that there. And this just to check in for anyone else that's like sitting there. I had a suggestion from a former manager who talked about a story bank, and it was just about like collecting stories along the time as time goes on and adding it to your bank. Not really knowing when you'll need it, but when it comes out, like to use it. If any outliers listening to this right now, and they're like, okay. Like I've always wanted to like capture my story. I want to like bring that in. I want to use it more for my brand, my business brand, my personal brand, or just for my own self, just to like remind myself actually who I actually am. Like we just talked about the origin story. What other types of stories might someone like sit down and think about crafting?
Well, for I would say there's a lot of different stories that you can go with that, but I think when it comes to like really getting hyper focused or really trying to appeal. It's just even being authentic, like authenticity is huge with being kind of what you know you were complimenting me, so be that genuine sense with story. So if it's a product, you know, what is this product, how was it made, why was it made, you know, there's a story right there.
So let me ask you this question because now I'm thinking about this from like the outlier story, right?
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about my outliers out there,
Okay.
and a lot of us feel like our story, um, you know, people wouldn't understand our story. We feel like who would want to listen to our story, so on and so forth. And I'm curious if you can speak to that part of it for yourself, maybe even like share something for you where like before when you wouldn't share your story, and then when you did start sharing, I'd be really kind of curious.
I think for me it really stems from when, because there were times too where like I didn't really want to talk about what I went through.
Mhm.
And anybody that goes through anything painful, you don't necessarily want to dive into it. So from an outlier perspective too, I think number one, I always tell people when it comes to sharing stories, especially if it's a personal nature, share what you feel comfortable sharing. You don't have to, you know, give the whole kitchen sink if you don't feel comfortable doing so. Um, you know, as far as your why on why you should tell, especially if as an outlier, you're not sure if people are going to be able to relate to you or understand your perspective. If there's just one person out there that needs your, there is somebody out there that needs your story without question. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I'm the only person that's ever gone through X, Y, and Z. Because there's another portion, there's another layer to my story that I don't get into. Um, but it's just like a very rare medical diagnosis that I had gotten prior to my celiac that they thought I had.
Interesting, interesting. And feel if you want to get into it here, feel free. Like we have space for it.
I won't get too into the weeds with it, but just using this as an example,
Yeah.
you know, that you might have something so unique to yourself that you feel nobody's going to understand me. I don't know anybody that's gone through what I've gone through, period. You might think that, but if you if you're brave enough and comfortable enough to share whatever that is, that perspective is, that story is, there's one person out there that needs your story. And that happened to me. I was listening actually to a podcast,
Huh.
and it was a famous actress who also was diagnosed with celiac, but on her way to her celiac diagnosis, she was treated for the same thing I was treated for. She's the only person that I know of that had a similar experience as I did. And it made me feel so less alone in the world, knowing that she was brave enough to share that. And so I share that with your outliers because you might feel like, I don't know that I don't know that anyone's going to get this perspective. I don't know if it's worth sharing. I'm telling you, if you can do it, if you feel comfortable doing it, there's, even if it's just one person in this world, this entire huge world, there's a person, you went through this for a reason, and maybe that one person needs to hear it so that they can feel less alone, that they can relate to somebody, and that they can make their lives better from your story.
This is like, look, I'm glad we went here. Like, as we're talking, I'm like, I think we might be in a good place to like wrap it. Like, 'cause I'm thinking about this. I'm like, I feel really good about this. Um, let's see, Sarah. Uh, I'm gonna trust that we're in a good place here, but I also want to check in with you. Like, if we did end the conversation right here, what would we have missed?
I think we hit on quite a bit with like depth of the like sharing sharing perspective. I don't know, did you want to share your story? I know you have so many episodes. I'm sure I haven't gone into every single one. I haven't listened to every single one. So I don't
Yeah.
know how in depth, or if you feel comfortable. And
I'm fine. I'm fine with the comfortability, if that's a word, is not rarely the issue for me. Um, I don't know if I like identify with my story right now, right?
Okay.
As a broad sense of story. However, I have lots of stories to share. So if there's something that like, if you want to give me a prompt, I might be
Is
able to
there
share something.
is there a story that you have
Yeah.
just from the perspective of what we've been talking about where you can kind of zoom out of your life, zoom out of your body. And if you're
Okay.
looking down at yourself, looking down at the life that you've lived, is there any story that you have that you feel comfortable sharing where you did see it was a bad thing that happened to you, but maybe as time passed, you saw the connection of maybe the good that it brought you? Like if I
Yeah.
hadn't gone through that, that good thing would have never have happened to me.
So let's play it in this way, Sarah. I appreciate it. I think this story is being written right now, right? And like I've been blessed overall to not have like, massively negative things take place in my world, or it's my Enneagram 7 that's coming up here, and all I can see is like I'm like finding a way to just like make it positive, and like that's just an experience, right? Um, I think I'll share it from the standpoint of like right now, I feel like I'm in a story that is a fairly difficult period for me. Um, and it's related to the work I'm doing with Outliers Edge and so on and so forth here. And it's the component of it is that for a very long time, I had told myself I was seeing a lot of success with the things I was doing. All right. Then I brought in like math and like, essentially this actually interesting enough goes with the NES 7, which is like just being like sober about where things are, And when I took a look at it, I was like, yes, I've brought in a number of different clients. Yes, I've built like, a number of different podcasts and master classes, and I've done a number of different things. But in terms of the business that I built, it wasn't like the foundation wasn't strong enough. Like it was at least not for my goals, right? Um, and what was happening is that my clients were coming in on very like more randomized basis. And yes, it were coming in like five figures a time, a client that was coming in. But I had my second child, and I was like, I also need to just get some more stability into the mix. Um, that has taken me on a journey for the last 2 years to bring in something that feels more stable. And as I keep going through it, it's I'm in a place right now where the journey is still like on being written, because I feel like the story ends once like the person's like figured out the secret, gone back to the world, and been like, now I'm victorious. And I'm still very much like in like I'm in the montage right now. I'm living the montage over several years, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Finding different things that are working, things that don't. Um, and living in the uncertainty of I know that there's a combination of this that all works. I just don't know what that combination is. And I'm not even sure that if someone came and presented that combination to me today, that I would be in a position to actually like receive it, meaning that there may just be, to your point, like this part that's like, I feel like I'm really slogging it. Like I feel like I'm like, ugh. Where's the eat? Like, where's that coming in? And then the other side of it is like, I don't know why, but something's saying stay with this, you know? Um,
Intuition.
yeah, my intuition is saying like let's go with this. And pull out what you can. And like I'm not opposed to like leaving things behind. Like I worked for about 8 years as a retirement actuarial consultant. Like I took several different exams along those paths, and I walked away from it completely to become an entrepreneur. So it's not that. I just think that it's almost like a lesson in how long does it actually take to be able to go to do something that could be good and
Right.
give yourself the space to make it something great. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think I can see that. Do you the intuition thing I think is interesting.
Mm.
Have you always listened to it? Has there been a time where you maybe didn't and regretted it? Because I think intuition
Mm.
really does, I think, drive a lot of our successes too, especially if it's telling us to do something wild and crazy that we might. not feel comfortable doing, but in the end may have led us to the right thing.
I think that the thing that showed up right now is that like in the past, I allowed myself to not see the truth in real time. So it wasn't that like, oh man, this thing sucks. And then later on, I was like, oh, but look at the positive elements of it. It was always like, it was not always, but it was, I tend to be able to create a veneer on it to make it not feel that way. You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah.
And so this in terms of intuition, I think I live a lot in the space of intuition, but I also look at intuition as a place of like advanced pattern recognition. So I can be like sometimes I can go into like the ethereal and be like it's my intuition. I got a download. Spirit was talking to me. Universe gave it to me, and now putting it out there. And other times I'm like, oh, okay, like I get this. I get this
Mhm.
thing here, and it something triggered based on that, or something was recalled as a result of that, and I bring it out now. So I don't. I'm actually actively searching for any time where like I didn't listen to my instinct or listen to my intuition on it there, and it ended up working negatively. There's a lot of like small moments, you know, like oh, and then I knew I should have moved this thing, and then it fell on my foot 3 hours later, that kind of stuff. But nothing that I think would
Derail you completely from your life path.
nothing that comes in like, and I think, and like, it's not to say that it didn't happen, but I think there's a part of it where it's like just my persona, the way that I am, my personality makes it hard for me to see said things along the
Hmm.
way. It's just this time I'm trying to go through it with eyes wide open, and I'm like, has it like, I'm like, wow, intuition says stay. Like every part of me wants to eject, you know,
Hmm.
um, and I'm curious what I learn at the end of this. And I might learn that like sometimes you just need to eject, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but it's really cool having to be in a place where I'm like, I'm building something and I'm not asking myself, is this the right thing? Well, actually, that's not true. Sorry, I ask myself that a lot. Is this the right thing? But I'm not answering I'm not answering that question directly heads on. It's like whether this is right or wrong. Like I want to become the person who can make it the right thing, if that makes sense. And that might be me going against the grain or struggling and all that stuff. But I'm like, I've also taken a lot of easy paths, and I'm really curious to see what happens this way.
Well, that's kind of an outlier's way to look at it too, when you think about it, where it might be easy to just take the typical road that everybody takes, but if you try to take that risk or try to make something work, I think is worth the risk, the road less traveled, you know?
Yeah, it's just, you know, just covered in brambles and thorns and like, you know, dangerous like snakes and tasty, tantalizing berries that end up like, you know, but I think that's it. That's why I feel like this is the story right here.
Mhm.
I feel like my empathy for people has really like grown in a lot of different ways. Um, and for whatever reason, this is the part of the journey that I'm on right now, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. It's not an easy time, you know. At the same time, it's also like there's alignment, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to. And a big part of it, Sarah, is I said I no longer want to be a six figure coach. I want to be an eight figure entrepreneur, and I think that there are it's bridging whatever steps I need to bridge in between to make that come to life. You know, like I look at it, I'm like, oh, when entrepreneurs talk about there was a time when I was struggling to make payroll. I'm like, it was cool as a story element beforehand, but like having now been in that position, I'm like, oh, that that it's just a like I don't know how to describe it. I actually feel like I'm actually more on the right path than not because I'm like, oh, I've put myself in a position where I'm making things happen. You know, well,
Yeah.
we shall see, but the story's still being written in this case.
That's the best part of it all for all of
Yeah.
us. The story
Yeah.
is written.
I appreciate you asking, Sarah. We're going to wrap up here, but I appreciate you asking because um, one of the things that I asked myself, like I decided to create a podcast and use that not to like spread my own thing, but to actually put other people at the center of it. All right. The Sometimes someone will ask me a question like this, and I'll like I try and share as openly and as honestly as I can. Um, and there's elements of this. I'm like, I'm really curious to see where this goes, and how this works. It feels like this the story I wanted to tell. Um, and it's super interesting to see like yeah, I'm learning a lot about myself through this year, you know. And so I appreciate you bringing this back to me.
I appreciate everything. Appreciate the time and the opportunity and
Yeah.
hearing your story too.
Yeah, well, let's say this here, Outliers, if there's anyone here that could really benefit from hearing either one of our stories or hearing the process that we've been going through, or just feel that like they can be seen by hearing what's been taking place, my ask is that you join us in the one person, one conversation at a time initiative and share this episode with one person in your life who would really benefit from this gift. And I do think it's a gift, if letting them know that you're thinking of them and why. You can also go ahead and share this on your larger platforms, but the thing that I think is really going to make the move the needle here is to join us in the movement of belonging, letting someone know that they belong by sharing the story with them. So just go ahead and join us in those efforts, Outliers. I appreciate you. So, Sarah, we've come to the end of our conversation. The way that I like to end here is to give you a chance to let outliers know how they can go deeper down the journey if they want to continue down with you, and then for you to also share an insight that you got from this conversation. What's something that you're taking away from this conversation? And if you didn't get an insight, you can just be like, I didn't get one. But you mind letting us know how to contact you and an insight you got?
Yeah, so you can contact me. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram at Sarah's Life Well Lived, all spelled out Sarah, Sarah's Life Well Lived. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My full name, Sarah Seweryniak, Seweryniak for last name, and sarahseweryniak.com if you want to connect. And for insights, I think for me, the ability to have a great connection and conversation, we're across the country from each other. So having the opportunity to connect like this and gain insight too that are is the reminder I'm talking to you about stories and how it makes us who we are and how the bad can lead to good, but your interjection too to remember that your story is still being written. It's not done. We've got hopefully a long way away from our last cover that we closed to this, so that I appreciate the perspective of that we're still writing this story.
Well, I appreciate you, Sarah. This has been a really fun time here, and I come to this and I say, like, outliers, take this here. Like you're writing your story, and you have many stories, and you keep growing on this here. And remember this, outliers. Until the next time we talk, be you on purpose. Journey on.